Hi everyone, my name is Josephine Dorado. I'm the president of the Fulbright Association's Greater New York chapter here in New York, and I'm happy to introduce our panelists, Jennifer Wright, the CEO of the Field, an artist service organization, and Earl Douglas, the executive director of New York's chapter of Black Rock Coalition, and Jeremy Xido, the director of Deaf Metal Angola, which we've just finished seeing. So I will let you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves and a bit about your organization. Jennifer, if you could start.
Sure. So I'm the executive director of the Field, which is an arts service organization here in New York, and we work nationally with about 1,400 artists and companies a year, helping build their capacity to make their art and grow their careers. We have 11 national and international sites, and actually Jeremy is part of the Field for many years now.
Yeah, quite a
Hey,
few.
Field.
Again, my name is Earl Douglas. I'm the executive director for the New York chapter of the Black Rock Coalition. We've been around since 1985. It was co-founded by a group of artists, namely Vernon Reid, guitarist of Living Colour, Greg Tate, writer, journalist, musician, Conda Mason. She was an artist representative, and it was started as a organization to really support and advocate musicians of color who were kind of going outside of the box. At that particular time, it was you had to do R&B, you had to do hip hop, anything in between was kind of verboten, and we had literally a small army of artists who were not doing that and wanted to freely express themselves and wanted to go through all the avenues afforded to pretty much everyone else, the same way. So they started the organization as a partially an advocacy group, and it's evolved over the years now that you can pretty much make your own record. You can go independent now, so we really support independent artists, but the focus is still supporting artists of color who just want to openly express themselves freely and openly and without any restrictions upon them.
Great. And I'm Jeremy Xido. I'm the director of Death Metal Angola. My background, however, is as a dancer and performer, and I'm the co-director of a performance and film company called Kabula 6 or Kabula 6, which is based in part in New York and part in Vienna, and we do live performance, site-specific work, dance work, and film work.
Okay, thanks. So I also want to add, too, that the New York chapter of the Fulbright has just this year launched a new program called the Fulbright Alumnus in Residence Program, which incubates alumnus projects that have to do with embodying the mission of the Fulbright, which is towards international peace and understanding. And we're happy to also announce that Jeremy Xido is actually our inaugural Fulbright Alumnus in Residence. So...
Yes, thank you. Thank you, it's awesome.
So one of the prevailing themes of Death Metal Angola is very much this idea of resilience, of about communities facing great adversity, whether that's adversity through economic or socioeconomic circumstances or natural disasters. So within this sort of prevailing theme of resilience, how do you guys feel that, or what sort of role do you feel like artists fulfill or can leverage towards building community recovery and resilience?
Well, I actually just answered a question similar to this yesterday for radio in Germany. So I can speak just in terms of what I think about the people that I met in Angola and sort of my experience there. A lot of people when they see the film and they talk about like, well, what's the power of this particular form of music, right? For this particular group of people, and a lot of times I've been answering that, well, it's a kind of music that can withstand the stories that they have to tell. Right, that there's something almost journalistic and the phantasmagoric lyrics, etc., are somehow related to a lived experience and being able to express trauma. But I actually think, in retrospect, I've been thinking that it's just the fact of having bands, and just the fact of having a joint mission, and being able to kind of touch truth together with other people and to kind of go for it, and to create a sort of safe space in order to do that is extremely healing, and in part because it allows you to kind of fight, pick up pieces, disagree with one another, and negotiate, which are all things that a lot of the people in this film, at least socially, the country has lost the ability to do over the course of 40 years of near constant warfare. And when I see them, it's not just sort of about cathartic release and screaming. It's actually about the constructive process of building an organization and having to stick with it, partly through ambition, partly through concerts that come up. And that is essentially, for me, when I think about it, sort of the main purpose of art, sort of as a social phenomenon.
I saw the film, and there was parts of the movie that, as I've been part of the BRC for 25 years, and there were little bits of our experience in that movie, just getting together, just harnessing the community aspects of it. And I think that was the key part. It was just like getting everyone together and just having like, okay, you feel this way, I feel this way, you feel this way. Let's get together and just turn whatever pain we have, whatever issues we have, whatever we have, just turn it into art and coordinating it. And I think that's what the arts is about, is just putting that all together and making something remarkable out of it. And I think that's it. It always starts with the arts. The civil rights movement started within the arts community, and the turning points came from the artists. So I always thought the arts were essential, and this movie definitely reinforced that whole idea that the arts can still be kind of a healing force, and definitely bringing people together. And again, I love this movie. I absolutely love the film.
I'll just tag on that I completely agree, and I was thinking about that on my way over, about civil rights in particular in Vietnam, and just all the different social movements that have really built from the arts, and how this film takes it, a humongous step forward, and I just really loved it. So thank you. And then the other side for me is also the less direct or less oblique ways or less direct ways that we see art's impact, and that like the other work that you make, Jeremy, and the work that you're involved with, and a lot of the work that we're involved with might be deemed like art for art's sake, and sometimes that's a real critique, and that's not good enough, particularly in a really competitive funding environment. And so how do we grapple with letting art hold all of that? Like, some of it is really direct, and the way these kids are impacted, the way the artists are impacted, the way a country is impacted, and then the other ways that art impacts our civic dialogues in maybe less kind of political way or social justice way, and that how do we hold both of those in our cultural participation, I guess.
Yeah. Great, thank you. I know that each of our communities very much addresses marginalization. So in each way, like the artists in the field community and the artists in the BRC and the artists in Angola are very much sort of like addressing this kind of marginalization. How do you feel, like what kinds of specific artists or projects can you think of that have dealt with like adversity particularly well, whether it's to Sandy or to 9/11 or specific other cases?
I'll dive in on that. So, for instance, Miguel Gutierrez has a dance theater music company called Miguel Gutierrez and the Powerful People, and it might be deemed, particularly his work, like more arts for art's sake in that way, but it is grappling with issues, particularly in queer culture, that are really assertive and really vibrant and really provocative. And his work, from my point of view, it's not attacking a specific thing like AIDS culture or gay marriage. It's not political outrightly, but through his art making and through his performance, you are called to respond. You are called as a human being to feel something and then potentially do something with that. Or someone like Mike Daisy, who's more overt in terms of his monologue work with Apple and that work, and sort of pushing those boundaries. I feel like we probably each have hundreds of examples. Those are just two that were off the top of my head.
We've done a bunch of, I hate the word tribute. We've always done retrospectives on, we've always targeted a specific artist's work. We did the Civil Rights Songbook of Curtis Mayfield. And and in doing that, you kind of address issues that are very universal. He had a song called, I think, This Is My America. I think This Is My America. This Is My Country, I'm sorry. And when we did that show, it took on this whole other different context because, we had the immigration debate going on in the country. We've taken shows overseas and done salute to women songwriters who in general, especially in rock and roll, have been very marginalized and kind of downplayed. And then you realize their catalogs is as strong as anybody's. Vernon Reed, he did a suite. He called it the 9/11 suite and it didn't address 9/11 directly, but it kind of addressed the aftermath of it. I saw him do a couple performances of it with Living Color and also as a solo artist, and it was very, very powerful. But I think that's kind of where you can approach an issue or a problem without actually just making it a grand theme and having certain songs kind of taking them into an entirely different level and using them as a totally different context. So I think with us, that's always been a challenge as far as, okay, how do we present or direct an issue without really politicizing it at all? And we might do a third, we call it the Million Man Mosh, and it kind of addresses how young black men are treated in the criminal justice system. But it's not, it's not direct. One of our longtime members, his son is kind of going through the criminal justice system, and we were doing it as benefits for him, and it just took on this whole other universal theme, whether we didn't even realize it, and I think that's how you do it. That's how you attack a problem. You kind of, we'll put it, you're kind of putting a picture, the same picture in a different frame, and I think that's how you can approach it, and that's how the arts really can work.
I think these are phenomenal examples. I think that there are lots and lots and lots of artists that are out there working in this way. There's a whole genre of art that I'm particularly fond of, and it just happens, and it's sort of urban graffiti art, and which I actually don't know who does it, other than I know maybe people by tags, but. But the reason why I'm particularly sort of drawn to it, and I actually see when thinking about the film and thinking about Okatiuka, there was we paid special attention to the walls in the space, and one of the reasons is that they're around you everywhere, and in the walls there's something about history that's inscribed in it. So there's there's just time, there's decay, there's the war, there's sort of bullet holes and things, but then there's also the faded paintings that exist, and the story of Yakuza, who's a young kid who died, who they got to draw on the walls and get everybody else to draw. And the thing about it is, there's something about inscribing something in space, and at that point you've changed the environment, and you've established some form of history, and so a story is then told out of that moment, which everybody has to then know because it's where they live, and then the story about that, and there's a kind of a politicization of and a validation of self and of a community, and I find that graffiti art actually establishes a broader community of people who are not necessarily artists but are people. And I sort of would, that link, at least, from where I come from, that graffiti is really big, and seeing it in this space. And I would say all the graffiti artists out in the world, most of them.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I just add something to that? Thinking about your question about marginalization and then the kids in the film, particularly what you said earlier about, sort of giving opportunities, particularly for music as such an outlet for storytelling. And one of the things in terms of marginalized folks, even here in the States, it's quite different from Angola, obviously, but who gets to be an artist? Who gets those opportunities, whether that's funding in the schools or the price of an MFA or equipment to try and play guitar or all of that stuff? Like, who gets to do that? And I'm more and more concerned about that. I call it the art gap, for lack of a better word, of like, who is getting to do this? And is it skewing more and more towards income privileged folks, primarily white folks in this country, or whatever it is? Like, where is that skewing, and who are we losing? And all the beautiful making that we're losing, whether it's quote unquote professional or not, but like what you can do with that as a human being, like just given the opportunity. Like, there's an organization called Willie Mae Girls Rock Camp.
Rock Camp for Girls.
Yeah, you guys.
Unbelievable. Like, and I did their Ladies Rock Camp twice, and that's like for resilience building, like saved my life as the executive director of a nonprofit. But like the Rock Camp it's unbelievable what they offer. And in terms of like gender issues and sexuality issues, and then music as a just empowerment tool. So yeah, I'm more and more concerned in this country about like, where are we investing? Where are we investing, particularly in kids, and who we're gonna lose?
Great, thank you. So those were all really great, like points of really just jumping off points. And so I want to sort of wrap this up and take any questions or feedback or comments that we might have from people in the audience. So I feel like I see like one hand out there. There's that mic and that mic on that side. So if anyone wants to kind of jump up. Shemaine.
Don't be afraid.
Hi, Jeremy. And everybody else. I really enjoyed the film, and I really found the people just so amazing, especially the people running the orphanage. Can you tell us more about how you met them and how you got involved in making this film?
Yeah, well, there's a Pat story by now that I tell, so I'll just tell it. It was by accident. I met them totally by accident. I was in Angola filming a completely different movie about Chinese construction workers that are rebuilding a train line that cuts through the middle of Angola. And the train line just, it stops in this town, Huambo, and I got out and I wanted a cup of coffee really badly, and there's apparently only one place in the entire town that serves a decent cup of coffee. It's called Imperial, and so I went there, and when I was there, I sat down with my coffee, and some guy across the way was like, he waved me over, and I kind of went over. I was like, okay, and I brought my little coffee and stuff with him. It's like, hey, what are you doing? And we talked, and he asked me what I did, and I said, I was making a movie, and that's great, and what do you do? And he's like, oh, I'm a musician. Oh, that's really cool. What do you play? Death metal. And I was just like floored, and I was like, "Are you what?" And I said, "Well, can you play for me?" And he was like, "Yeah, absolutely. Listen here, come. Here's my telephone number, and meet me tonight at this address at the Orphanage." Right, which I assumed at that point was a club, and I invited the Chinese construction workers that I had been filming and working with to go see this concert, out at the Orphanage, right? And so we drove in their SUV, and we arrived to this neighborhood, and it just happened to be on a night where the generator was out and there was no electricity, and so Wilker was there. Sort of siphoning electricity from his neighbor and to plug in his amplifier. And there were no lights, there was no microphone. And so we lit it with the lights of the SUV, and he proceeded to play the single most harrowing and beautiful open air concert I've ever heard. And there were these shadows of kids running around everywhere, and I had no idea what was going on. And these people became dear, dear friends. And about a year later, we were going back to film the train film, and I called up Wilker, and by that time I had met Sonia. And I said, we're coming back, and, would love to see you if you're around and film. And they're like, oh my God, that's great that you're coming, because we're organizing the first ever national rock concert, and you're going to film it. And that was it. I was hired at that moment. And that's it. That's how it happened. And it built over a course of a couple of years, and it was a partnership really between us and the Association for Angolan Rock, as a friendship partnership.
A lovely happy accident.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Hi. Thanks again for this film. It's really amazing. Is it open to the public? Where can you see this film now?
So I'll answer that one. Sorry, guys. So the film is now, it premiered at the beginning of the year, and it's been on the international festival circuit. And so it's traveled around the country to maybe 30 festivals, 30, 40 festivals worldwide in every continent except for Antarctica. And it is going to make its New York debut on November 16th at the Doc NYC Festival here in New York. And we're currently working with the Fulbright Association on organizing a tour of the film through the United States that we're calling the DMA Resilience Tour, which we're looking to launch in spring of 2014 to cities around the country that have, like Detroit, where I'm from, or New Orleans, or the whole slew of others that have been hit hard by economic or natural disaster, and we want to have a series of screenings, town hall conversations about resilience, and concerts, local concerts. And so we're about to start a fundraising campaign for that and get that off and running. So ideally in the spring, it'll be much more widely accessible. Okay. Thanks.
So just to wrap it up, I think we actually have to get things moving. Just a few last words on. Oh, there's one last question. Yeah? Okay, sorry.
Another question for Earl, actually. I just was really struck by your feeling familiar with the folks in the film about the early days of the Black Rock Coalition, and now that you're 25 years in, I wonder if there's advice for them, or if there's a way that you kind of feel like how they're beginning to gel is really going to stick, and can kind of how you can imagine for them where the future might go.
Advice is just keep going. Just keep playing. Just that little epilogue at the end was very encouraging as well, because they were able to do it a year later, and it was bigger, and it was clearly more concise and more organized. I mean, like the first one was kind of like, the sound wasn't working. The show started 5 hours late, and this wasn't working, and that wasn't working, and yet they pulled the show off. And my advice would be just keep going, find ways to make it better, and just let the scene kind of go where it goes. Don't try to shape it in any way. Like, wherever it goes, let it go. So, I mean, that would be my advice. And the chief advice would be just keep going. Just keep following the art. It will not betray you.
Awesome. Thanks.
That's great.
Just put one foot in front of the other, keep going. So what are some last words that you might all have on how we as communities can support artists so that artists can support their communities?
I'll be direct. Go to shows. I have 3. Go to shows. Join a board of an organization you love and give them money. So shows, boards, and money. Sort of back to the, where are we going as a country? The marketplace has gotten so competitive, and questions all the time about what kind of ROI does art give in the world, and concerns about new money versus old money and all of these things. And art, I think if we commit to it as a people, like what we believe in and what we want to see, and we have to put money behind that and time behind that and volunteer hours. If you believe in it, then go do it.
Kind of echoing her statement. Support it with your dollars. Support it with your presence mainly, because especially here in New York, it's tough to get. It's weird, and now we're in this kind of internet computer age. It's harder and harder to get people to actually leave their computer to go to a show. Support the shows, support organizations that support artists or support the nurturing of artists, especially with young people. I always say, have an open mind. I think the biggest obstacle that we've always faced with the Black Rock Coalition has always been, I don't like that rock thing. It's like, have you listened to it? Really broken down and listened to it, and they go, no. It's like, maybe you should, you know, like have a better understanding of its history, because once you, like, for me, everything connects, which is why I like every kind of music, because I think it all connects in some way or another. Like, there's a connect between Louis Jordan and Snoop Dogg, you know. So, you know, educate yourself on top of everything else, but support the arts, whatever particular whether it's Willie Mae Rock Camp, whether it's the BRC, whether it's whatever, you support it with presence and with your dollars. That's the short answer.
It's funny because both of you are saying is exactly what people in Angola are saying about their worlds. It's like it's the same issues. The only thing I would add to it maybe is to make stuff, is to be creatively engaged in the conversation. And that ultimately I see it as a conversation. There's something about, consuming that, is sort of the way that people go see shows. If you, have a good time or whatever. There's another thing about if it's your people in some way, or the people that you've committed to, or the thing that you yourself have gone out to do. And then there's something about actually creating a world in which we, you actually just do shit.
I would add to that too, and this sort of goes on what Earl was saying about having an open mind, is that having an open mind with regards to what art is and how we as communities can support art. So whether that's sort of like opening up different kinds of revenue models, looking at different kinds of crowdfunding campaigns, or just being inventive in the way that we as artists look at our art as an entrepreneurship and as a business, and how we can look at kind of hybrid models of how to do those things. And as Jeremy mentioned before, the Fulbright New York chapter is also helping out with doing this crowdfunding campaign of the Resilience Tour, which we're launching on Rocket Hub in the next few days. So look for the Resilience Tour on Rocket Hub. But very much around the whole conversation of like opening up what we envision as art and as community and community development.
Well, I think if I just add to that, I think that one of the really interesting things about the the crowdfunding model is the notion that it's about democratizing funding on the one hand, but it seems to me that it's even more so about establishing community, using sort of in the internet age, or in the place where, like, how do you actually get into different communities and have people sort of invest, not just financially, but invest emotionally and creatively in a project, right? So that they become part of that project. Like, how do you become part of the resilience?
How do we make stuff together?
How do you do shit?
Yeah. How do you do shit together?
Yeah, just to add on to that, Fishbone, longtime BRC supporter band, their last album was crowdfunded. And they had a great line. It's like, "You are the producer of the record." And I thought that's a pretty easy way to make people understand what this means. It's not, hey, I'm just like, you know what? I'm producing the album of the band that I always loved. And I think, and it becomes very empowering. And I think that's a very key part of, I guess, with crowdfunding. It kind of gets lost. And you know what? You're being part of this project that you've always wanted to see. God knows we hear enough about stuff that's, that's out there and it's being consumed by the masses, and then everyone's like, this sucks, and how come people are buying it? I was like, people are buying it because people are supporting it. Somebody's buying it. And then you could do the same things. Like, okay, don't complain about it, do something about it. Or put your dollars behind it. And I think that has to be stressed over and over and over again. It's like, whatever project you're passionate about, whatever artists, whatever you're into, if you don't put the time into it, if you don't nurture it, it's not going to go to where you think you want it to go.
Could I just tag on that, maybe as a kind of a Debbie Downer for a second, just on the crowdfunding? That one thing we see a lot with our 1,400 artists, the crowdfunding, certain models also really not just encourage, but urge you to give away stuff for your dollar. So, like, if I give $25, I'll get 2 tickets to a show and a signed album and a dinner with Jeremy. and suddenly the $25 is like, it's really worth so much more. And it kind of speaks to the ROI thing, and like what is philanthropy in this day and age, and what do we expect? And a lot of the artists we see are just giving away so much stuff, in part because they don't believe that the experiment and the art itself is sufficient. So they're going to give you a mug and a tote bag and a whatever happy ending, everything. They're going to give away the store in order to get your $25. And we just really try and work with our folks, at least, like, just be cognizant of that. One, can you handle it? Can you handle giving away all that stuff? But like, what does that mean in terms of investors and backers and all of that? Like, what does that mean? And are there people who really are okay with like, yeah, let me just give you some money because philanthropically I believe in the importance of what you're doing. And that's awesome. So just to be strategic about that. And if, like, for instance, like I give money to WNYC and I say, I don't want this stuff. Like, I don't need the stuff. I believe in WNYC. I don't need the tote bag. I don't need the New Yorker, which I can't even read because there's too many of them, despite the fact that I love it. But like, I don't need it. Like, just take my money, you know.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you for your time and your feedback. And thank you all for your time and your feedback too.
Yeah, thank you very much.